Welcome to Crime Stoppers, presented by Main Street Bank, a collaboration between WTRF-7, Love OV, and Crime Stoppers Upper Ohio Valley, a local organization tasked with finding new information on unsolved crimes. I'm Nick Nash, your host, and this week we're continuing our conversation about the unsolved double homicide that occurred in Harrison County in 1978. Frank and Irene Mahalka were an elderly couple that ran the Melody Inn Tavern in Harrison County. They were murdered in 1978 in their apartment in the middle of the night. The perpetrator was never found, but investigators and the Mahalka family never stopped looking. 43 years have passed now, but the Belmont County Sheriff's Office still considers this an active case. I sat down with Sheriff Ron Myers to get the story.
We're talking about a murder that took place in 1978. We're going way back on this one. The story that you're telling me is there's an elderly married couple who owns a bar in Unionville nearby, and they end up victims of a double murder and a robbery inside their bar, which also had a living quarters in where they lived as well. What can you tell me about this couple, who they were, and what their role was in the community at that time?
Well, basically, Nick, this couple, as you said, owned a bar. It was close to one of the coal mines down on then County Road 5. It's now County Road 13. But they operated their tavern down there, and they had their residence right there with that tavern. A lot of miners knew that, when payday hit, that they could come in there and get their checks cashed. And a lot of times people needed a little bit of money. I think, from what we read, that Irene and Frank gave them a little bit of money to get them by until payday or whatever the case was. Because back then a handshake went a long ways compared to what it does today. Someone on September 22nd of 78 decided that they needed to, we believe, rob them from everything that we've seen. And then also they caused this brutal murder of two very well-liked people in the community down there. We would like to see if, anybody else has any evidence that they can bring forward. It's 43 years ago. We understand that. The timeline's really long, but we have not give up. We've interviewed several people over the years, one person in specific, to see if he was involved in this anyways. He hasn't told us anything. With them being brutally murdered in an area where it just wasn't likely to happen, we just want some closure for the family that's still living.
So we're looking at a motive of a robbery, right? We believe that the motive here was to rob this couple of whatever money they may have had in the bar or in their residence. Is it believed that, based on the evidence that you have, is it believed that the perpetrator intended to kill these people that night or did so as a last resort? Is there any evidence to say one way or the other?
Yeah, there's nothing that says that one way or the other. Everything that we have in the case file on this doesn't say that that's what he or she intended to do, and we're saying he at this time. But that wasn't to be the outcome, I don't believe, but something went wrong, and I don't know why it went that way.
You were telling me there was some evidence of premeditation by the way of the phone lines were cut, the door was kicked in. This was very well, at least it appeared to be planned out. It wasn't just a chance meeting. The man wasn't, that we know of, a patron in the bar late at night that happened to already be there. We think that this person had intended to break in to rob this couple and potentially harm them as well.
Right, and with the phone lines being cut, that's a sure sign that it was been premeditated. Maybe it was not, so they wouldn't call local law enforcement or the sheriff's office at the time. But, you know, going back to that point, we have no idea, but, you know, we're just trying to figure out what did take place and who was the responsible party and take care of that issue.
What, if somebody in the area who was in the area in 1978 when this happened, if they were around, maybe they were a patron of the bar, they knew the family, they knew possibly a perpetrator, they heard something, they know something, what would you like to find out? You would obviously encourage them to call and tell what they've heard, what they know. But anything specifically that you're looking out for, anything that happened on those days in the area, anything like that?
Yeah, if they know of anything of anybody that possibly, you know, said, hey, you know, we're going to come back and get these guys, you know, because they do have a large amount of money there or whatever the case is. Because like I said, they was friendly people. They cashed the checks from the mine that was down there. I mean, a lot of people knew that. So it was well orchestrated at the time in 1978 that, you know, with the phone lines being cut and then going into the residence, kicking the door in, you know, not going up through the bar. So yeah, anything that might lead to that, or if anybody remembers anything, somebody telling them, you know, I realize a lot of it might, you know, 43 years ago is going to be hearsay, but if that person has any knowledge of, or if any persons have any knowledge of what happened that day, we would like them to come forward.
So going back to the victims just a second, these were by all means well-liked people in the community, well-known. They owned a business, they cashed checks for coal miners. It was kind of a coal miner bar from what I understand, near the coal mine. There's no evidence to say that they were ever wrapped up in having any debts or owed somebody money or gambling issues, nothing like that. There would be no reason that somebody would come after them specifically for something like that.
No, everything into the case file that we've learned over the years and has been presented to us has none of that attached to it, that they owe people money. I think they, you know, manage their money very well, as older people do. You know, probably if we all would look at that and manage our funds the way we did 43 years ago, we wouldn't be in the shape that we're in today. But, you know, I don't see any of that in this case file whatsoever.
Finally, I want to ask you about any suspects. I understand that there is a person of interest that you have looked at over the years. Without getting too deep into the details on that, this person was in the area at that time, was known to be in this bar. What else do you know about that points in that direction?
Well, and I think from the original case investigators that we had on this, that they looked at everybody that was around there, and for whatever reason it kind of singled down to this one person, which we still don't know for sure. But we would like, you know, anybody that would have that information to please, you know, obviously still come forward and make us aware of what they possibly know, because there's more people. I mean, obviously 43 years ago was a long, long time. There's a lot of people that still have goodness in their heart, and I think they would be more than happy to say, you know, hey, we can help on this and we can get the family closure, because that's what we're looking for, is family closure. I mean, it's been 43 years. There is siblings. There is a daughter that's still living. There's several nieces and nephews that's still living. So, you know, I said, as I said, I think if we can get closure for those, that'll be a win for us.
Crime Stoppers is presented by Main Street Bank, a production of WTRF-7, Love OV, and Crime Stoppers Upper Ohio Valley. If you know anything about the murders of Frank and Irene Mahalko, please call the Crime Stoppers Upper Ohio Valley tip line at 877-TIPS-4US. That's 877-TIPS, the number 4, US. It's been more than 40 years, which makes this case even more difficult to close, so any new information might help. If you've heard anything, even a rumor, about what happened that night in Harrison County, please call the tip line at 1-877-TIPS-4US.